will AI replace software engineers? As software engineers, should we be concerned for our job security, or should we be excited to see this technology progressing? And ultimately, if AI starts to replace jobs, is the development of this technology even a good thing for society? In this video, I want to try to answer some of these questions and shed some light on what I think is going to happen in the short and long term, and how you can actually adapt to benefit from it. Now, of course, I'm just one person with one opinion, so I'm not going to try to make statements of pure fact in this video, but rather I'll try to discuss various possible outcomes and how likely I personally perceive them to be, and feel free to let me know down in the comments if I miss anything or if you just disagree with what I've said. But anyways, here's my somewhat educated guess on what I think is going to happen in the future. So first of all, where are we right now? For software engineering specifically, we're at a point where AI can potentially be useful to becoming more efficient in some of our jobs. However, I don't believe we're at a point yet where it's able to replace any substantial number of jobs, if any at all. That said, AI and just advanced technology in general has started to replace some jobs outside of software engineering. For example, many factories and warehouses are primarily run by robots and specialized artificial intelligence already. And this is just one step beyond the first technology replacement, which was replacing jobs like cashiers with electronic kiosks. Over time, technology is going to get better and better, and it doesn't even need to be perfect at anything to start replacing jobs. It just needs to be better than humans, or at least more economical. And the reality is that that bar probably isn't all that high in most things. Humans can only work so much, and they can only work so quickly, and we also just make tons of mistakes throughout our day-to-day work. The example I like to use here is self-driving cars. Potential regulation and public fear aside, the time we should replace human drivers with AI is when they are safer than humans. And self-driving technology is one that's been getting better and better very rapidly, but it seems like we've been, quote, just a few years away for, well, years. So then, when will it be more economical to use artificial intelligence instead of a full team of software engineers? And the first possibility I see, and I think this is a very likely one, is that we are much further away from this point than it might seem. Yes, AI can generate code to solve some basic tasks. And yes, it can even contribute to larger design discussions. And yes, this is absolutely incredible to see. However, this is very, very different than contributing to a codebase with millions of lines of code across thousands of files. And personally, I would be amazed if we see an AI that can do that at a human proficiency anytime soon within the next decade, if not even longer. But of course, there's a counterpoint to that. Maybe we aren't quite as far away from this as I think. Maybe the problem just isn't as difficult as it seems, and maybe we're just a few years away from being able to give our entire codebase to some AI, and it's able to make larger code contributions just like a software engineer. But that leads to another problem. AI is able to learn from and synthesize information that it saw in training data. But that brings up the question of, will it ever be able to innovate beyond what it learned from that data? That's not to say that it's just copy and pasting, because it's not doing just that. However, we don't want all of the future code we write to be written like it was written in 2022. We want to continue innovating. And innovation, in a way, feels like an inherently human property. But at the same time, we now have AI that can seemingly create creative works of art, so maybe innovation beyond the level of what trained the AI is possible as well. There's also a potential issue with adoption. Similar to self-driving cars, even if they were perfect, we wouldn't immediately be able to just replace all of the drivers with AI. There would be some level of fear in consumers in getting into a car without control over it. Not to mention, some people just enjoy driving. Similarly with software engineering, companies need to learn to trust this AI more than they trust their existing engineers. We often talk about the difficulty of coding interviews, and one of the reasons that companies use these is to prevent false positives in hiring. If they hire one bad software engineer, and that person makes one bad engineering decision, it could end up costing far more money than the value that that engineer generates for the company. And the same is true with AI. If it causes some major security vulnerability, for instance, that one mistake could be enough to warrant keeping the entire human developer workforce if they feel that the human developers would be less likely to make that kind of mistake. Now again, even the most skilled developers do make mistakes. So I would expect that eventually AI will make less mistakes than even the most skilled software engineer. However, it could take a long time for companies to build that trust up, even after the point where AI is at that point technically. But now I want to talk about the hypothetical situation where AI has started to replace software engineering jobs. Maybe this is in 5 years, or maybe it's in 30 years. But regardless, what would happen in this scenario? Well, if AI can replace software engineers, then it's very likely that it can also replace many other jobs as well. It's actually sort of hard to think of any job that couldn't potentially be replaced by artificial intelligence and potentially robotics. So in that scenario, companies across the world are going to be using artificial intelligence. And these aren't just tech companies, this would be nearly every single company. And even if one program equates to multiple jobs, there will need to be software engineers to create and maintain that AI program. And these software engineers are going to be employed everywhere at companies that you never would have thought would be employing software engineers. Maybe eventually we'll get to the point where AI is creating and maintaining itself, but I think that's sort of an idea more from science fiction than reality, or at least it's one that's a very long ways away. So in this hypothetical, I actually think there's a high likelihood of software engineering being one of the most resilient jobs to complete replacement. Additionally, if we ever get to that point, then most likely society will need to be greatly restructured in some way. If most jobs are replaced by AI, then unemployment would skyrocket. As a result, nobody would make any money, and thus nobody would be able to purchase the goods created by these companies using AI, causing the companies to lose money as well. In a way, it's like a tragedy of the commons. If one company replaces its workforce, then they will likely become more profitable. But if every company does this, then they will start losing money because of a lack of care for the overall job market. In response to that, I think there are two possible likely scenarios. Scenario number one is that the government steps in some way. This could be either by creating a universal basic income or potentially some other form of legislation focused on creating new jobs or getting money in the hands of consumers. And the second scenario is the radical shift in the world will create tons of new jobs doing new things that we just can't even fathom right now. And potentially there'll need to be some mix of these two scenarios. But regardless, the optimist in me says that it's very unlikely that the development of AI and the improvement of technology is somehow going to destroy our economic system. I don't think that's very likely at all. So as for what you should be doing, I wouldn't be too worried. In the short term, I would see if there's ways that you can use tools like ChatGPT in your own work to improve your efficiency. Learning to use tools like this well could very well be the equivalent of having learned how to use a computer in the 90s. That said, I wouldn't be too concerned about losing a software engineering job or really any skilled labor job in the next few years, if not much longer. And in the long term, I don't think we can fully prepare for a change that we don't fully understand yet. But what you can do is continue learning and improving your skills as a developer. And if it is something that you are particularly concerned about, then maybe try spending some time learning more about artificial intelligence and machine learning, as this could be a great way to give yourself some extra long-term job security. But again, all that said, I am just one person and I can't predict the future. So let me know if you agree or disagree with me in the comments, subscribe for future content, and I will see you next time.